Good morning. It's been good to be here. Really appreciated the songs that we sang. Felt like I'm going to echo them. And maybe echo a lot of what David said as well, just from a different perspective and different angle. So thank you for that, brothers. I appreciate it. I have a subject this morning that has a lot of different angles and aspects to it, and we could focus on a lot of different things here. I just want to, though, focus on one specific thing, and the word, just simply as an introduction, the word is one word, and we probably would have different definitions if we went around and asked you, what does this mean? What does this word mean? What do you think it means? We'd probably have different answers from each other. And that's because there are different answers, and there are different aspects, and there are different ways of looking at that. And the word this morning that I'd like to look at is this one little word, and it's the word trust. And I'd like to ask 3 questions and try to answer those 3 questions. First one is, what is trust? We're going to try to define it. The second one is, why do we trust God? Why do we trust God? And I think our definition is going to help us answer that question. And the third question is, how do I then create trust in those around me? And I have to admit that as I was preparing for this, the message took a very different turn from where I expected to go. And so I trust that this morning that is from the Lord, and that He wants to speak to us, and He has something to say to us. I'd like to start with trying to define the word. And maybe these are different levels of trust. The first one that we often think of when we say, oh, I trust this person, we mean we're unguarded in a relationship around that person. So we can just, I trust this person. I can let my hair down. I can be myself. I'm just comfortable here. That's a level of trust that some relationships have. And this is a level of trust that some relationships need to have. For example, in a marriage, that would be something that is important, is that we're unguarded. But that's not necessarily necessary for every single relationship that we have. I looked up this word in the dictionary, and it says it this way: a firm belief in the integrity, ability, or character of a person or thing. And we could say, that's why we trust God. He's someone of integrity. I trust His character. I trust Him for who He is and what He says He is, and I believe that. And that's one element to trust in God. A firm belief in the integrity, ability, or character of a person or a thing. And we can trust a person because we believe in their integrity, ability, or character. And that's one aspect of trust. And I want to look at a third one, and this is the one I want to focus on this morning, is a trust that is the confidence that the other person or the individual I'm trusting in will act in my best interest. The confidence that the other will act in my best interest. Which I found interesting that this is actually a very close parallel to love. Love seeks not its own. It seeks the best for others. And so, but it is this confidence that others will act in my best interest that will make a church, that will make any organization work. So we don't necessarily need in an organization or a church a complete unguardedness, a complete vulnerability. You know, I'm just completely open to you, everybody, at all the time. You know, that can be good, and that can be helpful, and that can be something that we look for or can strive towards, to be more vulnerable, to be more unguarded. But I feel like this morning, in order for us to flourish as a church, we don't necessarily need to come to that level. But the trust that is essential, the trust that forms the foundation for a healthy church, is one where we're not seeking to advance our own interest, but we're actively interested in the good of the whole. And there's a case to be made. There's a case to be made that this is a very distinctly Christian thing to do. That this is a very distinctly Christian thing to do. It's a God thing. You see, one of the reasons we trust God is because He is always looking out for my best interest. I'm assured of that. And that's not because I deserve it or I'm something special or anything like that, but because God is love. And 100% of the time, I can be assured that He's looking out for my best interest, no matter what happens to me, no matter what my circumstances are, no matter what I encounter in life. I can trust fully that God is working things out for my good. And that's why I trust Him. Because He does it perfectly. He does it without error, without flaw, without mistake, without any guile or wrong thinking or wrong motives or wrong attitudes. He does it perfectly. He loves perfectly. And that's one of the reasons why we trust God. Romans 5:8 says, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He didn't do something for us because He wanted to get something back, or He wanted a payment, or He wanted something out of us. He loved us before we ever loved Him. In Romans 8:28 it says, we know that all things work together for what? For good. To them that love God. To them that are called according to His purpose. We know that all things work together for good. And that's one of the fundamental reasons why we have and can have a trust in God. We trust God. We can trust Him deeply because no matter what, He's working for our best good. He's working in our best interest. In Philippians chapter 2, Paul writes and says, "Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him a form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. And that's why God has highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name." You know, it says here, this mind is not something that comes from me. No, it's something that's imparted to us from Christ Jesus. And the reason why Paul says we should esteem others better than ourselves is because that's what Jesus did. He didn't look for what he could get out of this. He had a mind in him that even though he was in a place where he was honored, where he was in heaven, he was being served, he was God, he made himself of no reputation and became a servant. He humbled himself. Not only did he become a man, he became a humble man. Not only did he become a humble man, he suffered a death that's unspeakable. He humbled and humbled and humbled and humbled himself. And he says, let this mind, this same mind be in you. Let this same mind be in you. Note that God is not working necessarily for what we want or what we desire. God is not a magic lamp that we rub and is a genie that comes out and gives us what he wants. No, but he's actually working for our good. Not what we want, not what feels good, but was ultimately for our good. He's always interested. He's always working to that end. And that is why we trust him. Because no matter what, in every instance, in every circumstance, he's looking out for that. Because that is God. He is love. He is good. He is always good. He is perfect. He cannot do, be, think anything wrong, anything unrighteous, anything out of order. Everything he does is good and just and right. And so he's always working everything for our good. And he cannot do otherwise because that's who he is. Now, when I was thinking about this, that is a profound thought, that God is working for my good. And I felt like, you know what, that could become, if that's what I focus on, that could become self-centering. But God is the one who's working in us according to his good pleasure. It's not about me. It's not about us. It doesn't mean that even though he does everything for our good, that doesn't mean I become the center of the universe. It doesn't mean that I am now somebody more important than anyone else. No, he's fully in control. But our greatest good, which is ironic, our greatest good will be realized when we bow to him. And the lie that the enemy gives us is, You know, if you surrender, if you bow your knee to Jesus Christ, He's going to take from your life. He's going to rob you of something. He's going to take something away. He's going to take some pleasure and joy, and that's such a lie. Such a lie from the enemy. Our greatest good is realized when we bow to Him, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. The statement, it's for our good and for His glory. I think that sums it up. It's for our good, for His glory, everything He does. Everything He does. Everything He does. I want to turn to 2 Peter. In chapter 1, here's a list here that we recently read through. It says, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. And I found it very interesting that this list of faith and virtue and the living a life that's good, and adding, self-control and patience and godliness and all these things that seem to make up life, Peter caps out this list with the most important and says, all of this that you're doing, all the self-control, all the patience, all the knowledge, all the virtues, all the faith that you have leads to one thing: brotherly love and charity. Charity. What is charity? What is charity? What is this love? And I think we know the definition. It's a self-sacrificing love. A self-sacrificing love. And I could ask the question today, just like I could ask you the question, what is trust? I could ask you, what is love? And again, we'd get a lot of different responses from what is love. And we could say things like, love seeks not her own. And we'd say, that's what love does. It's not necessarily what love is. We could say it lays down its life for its friends. Again, that's what love does. But what is love? And we struggle to find a definition for what love actually is. What is love? There's only one definition in the world about what love is. We have a lot of description of what love does, and how love acts, and how love thinks, and what love does, and how it flows out of your life. But there's only one definition in the Bible about what love is. And the Bible says, God is love. God is love. Love does a lot of things. And the Bible describes those things that love does. But when it gives the actual definition of love, it says, God is love. And we've said that phrase so many times, God is love. What does that mean? The Bible says God demonstrated His love in that He sent His Son into the world to save it. And so if God is love, then we cannot love. We cannot. We're incapable of love without Him. We're incapable. We can do things that love does. We can sacrifice. We can give our body to be burned. We can do a lot of things that look like love. We can do love, but we can't truly love without God. We can do some of the things love does, but we cannot love without God. And so love, over and over in the books of 1 John and Peter, love is the apex, the peak, the high point of Christianity. But we're unclear about what that means, and I hope it becomes clear as we go about what love is. Love is the example set by Jesus. It's the foundation for all relationships. When we love, when we truly love, and the only way we can truly love is when we are filled with God. When we're filled with God. And when we can truly love, then we can create trust in those around us. Because we trust people who love us. We feel betrayed by people who put their own interests and their own advances above our own. That's betrayal. That's like Brutus, when Caesar met Brutus on the stairs walking into the Senate. And Brutus is there and he pulls a knife and he strikes the first blow, and Caesar says, "You too, Brutus? You too, Brutus?" The person who puts his own interests ahead of ourselves, is willing to throw us under the bus, so to speak. That person we feel betrayed by. We call the Judases, the Benedict Arnolds, those people of the world. They put their own interests. They want to advance their own selves more than they are looking out for my best interest or the best of the whole. Many people instinctively do not trust government. And when we think about it, we're not surprised. Because it seems that politicians, even though we call them, in Canada we call them ministers, right? We have ministers of education and we have ministers of public service, and we call them ministers. We call them public servants. And yet when we watch them, we say, you know what? They're not serving the public. They're not ministering to anybody. They're out to advance their own interests. They're lining their own pockets before they line and make sure their constituents are taken care of. And so we have this inherent mistrust for people who are in power and yet advance their own interests above the interests of who are they're supposed to be advancing the interests of. And so that's why, when you have a government like that, you have a lot of mistrust for government like that. You're like, why don't they do this or that? Why are they just caring about themselves? It's because we don't trust people who put themselves first. And so let's relate this to the church. Jesus' church is made up of individuals. And this is like the criteria for being part of the church. They're made up of individuals who have firstly responded to the call to take up your cross and follow me. And this call is a real call because it forms the foundation of all of Christianity and what we're talking about. Because if we cannot take up our cross, we cannot be his disciple. It is upon the bed, this is the bedrock. This call of Jesus Christ to come and lay down your life is the bedrock upon which an effective church will be built. Because we as people are born with a deeply rooted selfishness problem. We primarily love ourselves. We primarily value our comfort. We are worshipers of ourselves. Our desires from young on are to be satisfied first, and the rest of you can wait. This is inborn in us, instilled. This is our nature. And when you think about it, the root of all sin is selfishness. Think about it. Stealing. Why is stealing wrong? Why is it wrong? Why can't I walk into a store, take something and leave? There's lots more there. Store won't really notice. Why is it wrong to go to your house and take something that I want and leave? Why is that wrong? God said it was. But God says everything for a reason, right? Everything that God made to be sin, he had a reason for why it is sin. And that's true in everything in the Old Testament. A lot of these commandments, God had reasons for them. He didn't say you need to understand them. But the stealing is wrong because, you know what? I'm taking something from you. Who's the loser? You're the loser and I'm the winner. And I'm primarily serving who? Myself. I'm advancing my interest. I'm getting what I want at the cost of you. That's why stealing is wrong. It's selfish. Why is adultery wrong? We could use the same reasoning, right? The two people who get involved in an affair and an adultery are not thinking about their children, the rest of their lives. They're not thinking about their relatives. They're thinking about themselves and what makes me feel good right now, and what will benefit me right now, and what will do something for me right now. And you could go through the list of things that we say are wrong and are morally wrong, and we could lead them down to the root of the reason why they're wrong is selfishness. Why is it not wrong then for me to go into a store and exchange cash and the person gives it to me and everybody's happy? Or why can I go work for someone and we do an exchange and they pay me and I give them my services? That is not wrong. There's no moral commandment against that. There's nothing ethically wrong about that. Because I'm benefiting you and you're benefiting me. This is a transaction where both people are served. And that's why business and service are a good thing. We can serve someone and there's a transaction where I get something, you get something, and we both benefit. Now we can take it a step further and say when we volunteer for someone, we're doing something for someone and getting nothing in return. That's another level of service that's even higher than that. But sin is at the root selfishness. And those are the things that God forbids. And there's lots of other things, that are fundamentally selfish. We do them by ourselves often. I remember when I was a boy, I spent an awful lot of time playing video games. I remember this one time sitting there for 6 hours straight. And I remember still the feeling of how empty I felt when I was done. And I've often wondered, why do I feel so empty sometimes after I do certain things? I walk up and I feel empty. And I've come to the same conclusion that it's primarily selfish. I'm not doing anything for anybody. I'm not serving anybody. I'm not doing anything that benefits anyone else. And so I feel empty. I feel bad because I've been primarily selfish. And that's the root cause of basically every sin, is when we do something selfish. And we can probably point most sins to this end. They come from this root. And so unless we receive a new nature from Jesus, we will be selfish. And we will not love. We can do things that love does, but we will not truly love, and we cannot be trusted. We cannot be truly trusted. Now, we can be a Christian and still people not trust us. But I don't believe that we can truly love and truly be filled with love and not build trust with people. Because we will constantly be looking out for the interest of others. And it is this kind of call that Jesus has on his church. He calls us to be a city set on a hill. He calls us the light of the world, the salt of the earth. He says, "By this shall all men know you are my disciples, by your love for one another." And this is only possible when the love of God invades your soul and you are born again in your life surrendered to the will of the Father. Only then can you love. Only then can we esteem others better than ourselves. The love of Jesus needs to pervade our souls. It needs to fill every crevice and corner. It needs to take out all the selfishness that's inborn and ingrained in us and turn it into concern for others. Trust is born out of this love that God is. This love comes from God. It's not possible for me to love this way. It's not possible. This love seeks the best for the other person. Love is easily confused sometimes with feelings, with emotions, with warm fuzzies, and some of those are nice. But true love seeks the other's greatest good and seeks to meet the other's needs. Just one example, as guys and girls get older and they start to notice each other, sometimes this gets confused as love. And we have names for it. We call it puppy love or infatuation or a crush. But I want to point us to a different standard, a love that seeks the best, the good of the other. And what does that love actually look like? If God is love, if God is love, then true love between two people will mean that we will draw each other closer to love, to God. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that, yes, there's a lot of other aspects to the relationship when it comes to love. That self-sacrificing love that seeks the good of the other. Our ultimate goal should be to lead each other closer to God and to spur us to closer devotion to Him as the source of all true love. Because without Him, we can't love. And so, if you're at a place that you're too young to seek commitment in marriage in the near future, you should not seek the affection of another, because this violates love does not seek her own. We can easily confuse these things. You know what? Sometimes when young men say or try to say, "I love you," to a young lady, what they really mean is, "I love the way you make me feel." And that's not what we're ultimately after. What we're after is a thoughtful, I wonder what the best way is for me to point you to the author of love. Two individuals who truly love each other will seek what is best for the other in this part of your life. And we have to realize that we will not and cannot truly love if we're not abiding in Him. And so just encouragement to you, if you're a youth, if you're wholeheartedly pursuing God, He will fill you with a true and genuine love that comes from Him and Him alone. And God loves, remember, God loves in the purest way possible. He cannot do anything else. And I believe we can have that same love for each other. Ephesians 5:25 says, "Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave Himself for it." Gave Himself. Love is demonstrated by sacrifice. How hard is it to trust someone who sacrifices for you? How hard is it for a wife to submit to someone she respects? But respect and trust are won through sacrifice. It's difficult to respect anyone who's in it to see what they can get out of it. You can't trust that person. Now, for some context, maybe when my wife and I got married, we didn't know what this sacrifice would look like. We didn't know. There's no way you could know. But what the marriage covenant commits to, it commits to that sacrifice. It commits to making that sacrifice. And that's what we aim for. And when we do that again and again and again and again, respect and trust are the result. Love grows and trust grows. Now, when the opposite happens, when authority abuses trust or misuses trust, when they don't act out of love, and this could be anyone. This could be a husband, a parent, a teacher, a minister, an employer. When that trust is abused, and sometimes it's grossly abused, and the worse it is abused, the greater the brokenness and the dysfunction that comes out of that. We cannot, and sometimes there's horrendous cases where someone who was supposed to protect you is the one that harmed you. And that we realize there's a level of deep, deep brokenness that follows that is sometimes very, very difficult to mend. Because the very person who was supposed to protect me, the one that was supposed to guard me, the one that's supposed to look out for me, harmed me. And so if we're in a position where we lead others, if we're a husband, a parent, a teacher, in the ministry, we're an employer, we have a special care to take. Ephesians says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Peter says, neither as lords over God's heritage, being an example to the flock. Don't be a lord over God's heritage. If we, as the leader of our homes, classrooms, and churches, consider ourselves first, how we feel first, how we might be advanced first, instead of the good of the other and the greater good of the whole, we violate the law of love and break the trust necessary for our church, home, school, and workplace to function. Becoming trustworthy is hard. Because sometimes it needs someone to be firm. It means that you need to be firm with someone you love. You need to be hard on someone you deeply care about. You may need to discipline someone for the good of the person or for the good of the whole. You build trust when you step into discomfort rather than tiptoe around it. I think of Jesus stepping into this earth and all the unsettling realities that were present when he walked the face. Think about all the demon-possessed people Jesus encountered, all the sickness Jesus encountered, all the hate and men's hearts that he encountered. He walked into a very unsettling reality. But his willingness to do that has won him the love and admiration of all of his followers, millions of them. The truth is, most of us would rather be miserable than uncomfortable. And so we just stay there. The cost, however, of loving ourselves more than someone else, the cost of not building trust is large. It creates an unsafe environment for everyone involved. I think of a classroom where a teacher is not willing, and I'm guilty of this. A classroom where a teacher is not willing always to toe the line and follow the rules and enforce them quickly gets dysfunctional. Workplaces get chaotic, and walls go up in churches. But walls come down when love prevails and trust is heralded in. Trust is created when we insert ourselves into a difficult situation and choose the greater good above what is comfortable for you, nice to you, preferable and pleasing to you. Because that's what Jesus did. He left the splendor of heaven, knowing that his destiny was the cross. He put ourselves in our situation. And we love and we trust him because he was willing to make himself extremely uncomfortable for us. And we know that's how he is. We love him because he came into our situation where we were helpless. We couldn't save ourselves. We couldn't do it ourselves. And that's where we as parents and as teachers and as ministers need to find ourselves. We need to be strong for someone because they are weak. We need to give boundaries to those that lack self-discipline. We need to give rules for those who cannot control themselves. And too many times, I have to admit, as a parent, and maybe more so as a teacher, I find I love myself more than I love my children and more than I love my students. I tolerate things. I let them go. I don't enforce what I said I would. I say it's just a little thing, let it slide. It's not a big deal. But I find that safety, children feel safe when I do enforce the rules, when I don't just let things go. You know, there's a theory out there, it's called the broken window theory. And it's an idea suggesting that visible signs of disorder like graffiti, litter, or broken windows encourage crime. And that if you maintain order in communities, it helps prevent serious crime. And when small acts of disorder go unchecked, it sends the message that no one cares or no one is enforcing the rules. And the environment itself acts as a form of communication, shaping people's sense of safety and influencing behavior. And so this is true in Winnipeg. When we lived in the West End downtown, we got flyers in the mail that says, if you get graffiti, here's, they send us this postcard, call us, we'll get it removed as soon as possible. Because if there's graffiti there and it's left, there's probably going to be more coming soon. And if there's lots of graffiti, it leads to other acts of crime, and so on and so forth. This was also true in New York City. New York City was experiencing a high rate of violence, and I'm not sure what the time era was, the 50s or the 70s, something like that. And they decided to crack down on two things. One of them was graffiti on subway trains. The other one was paying fares. Those two things. You'd say, we have a murder problem. We have a homicide problem. We have muggings taking place on the subway. Why do you care that people pay the fare? Why do you care that there's graffiti on the grate? People are getting killed. But when a train came in that had graffiti, it was taken off the tracks that same day. It was cleaned. It was put back in the tracks. Graffiti was not allowed to ever be on a train. If it was on there, it was removed overnight. Same thing. Paying the fare was strictly enforced. You had to pay your $2, $3 to get on the subway every time. If you didn't, you were arrested. And surprisingly, violent crime dropped dramatically. Dramatically. The murder rates dropped. This doesn't make sense, but it does. Because disorder, going unchecked in small ways, sends the message that no one cares and no one's enforcing the rules. And so as we serve those in our home schools, in our schools, in our churches, in our workplaces, what are we motivated by? Are we motivated by fear? Are we motivated by what other people would think? Are we motivated by anxiety? Or are we motivated by love, God's love filling us and choking out our idols, taking away the altars we build to ourselves? Trust will be built by loving each other fervently out of a pure heart. Seeing you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit unto unfeigned love of the brethren, see that ye love one another with a pure heart fervently. Pure. What does pure mean? We can have pure apple juice. What's in pure apple juice? Just apple juice. That's it. It's one ingredient. Just apple juice. Pure. And so pure means only one thing. Out of a pure heart. That's a heart that is given wholly and completely and utterly to God. And God, being love, will fill us. And so, if I have one message for us this morning, it is this: give yourself to God. He will fill you with a real love, a love that is not fake. That's what feigned mean. It says a love unfeigned. Feigned means you faked it. A real love that is not fake. A love that will build the trust in those around us. Only through Him. Only as we allow Him to fill us will we have this kind of love and be able to build the level of trust that is called of us as the Church of Jesus Christ. That city that is set on a hill. And so my cry to each one of us is, let Him have His way with you. Let Him fill you with His love. Pursue Him. Be devoted to Him. Make that your life's goal and mission and aim. You know, at communion, we use bread and we break it in remembrance of Him. You know, bread, when you think about bread, bread represents a lot of people working together to create it. There was a farmer that planted it and harvested it. There was someone that drove it somewhere. There was someone that sold it. There's someone that ground the wheat into flour. There's someone that baked the bread. There's someone that put it in a store. There's someone that sold it. There's a lot of people that work together to make bread. And this working together, that it symbolizes, that bread symbolizes, flows out of trust. And this trust will flow out of love. And that love will come as we are abiding in Him. And so that's our call this morning. Do you love Him? Are you devoted to Him? Or do you have idols in your life? Are there rooms that Jesus Christ cannot touch today? Or are you fully devoted to following Him and letting Him pervade your life with His love? You know, I believe that one of the greatest disappointments that we'll have when we see Jesus is seeing how much He loves us and how little we gave Him in return. Because we were too distracted. We were too busy. We were too entertained to spend time with Him. We're too busy ministering. We're too busy serving. We're too busy giving to be loved by love Himself. And so this morning, I know we started with trust, but true trust will only flow out of love. And I hope I've also convinced you this morning that we cannot love. We are selfish people. And only as we let God have His way with us will we be able to love and care and lay down our lives for each other. And it's upon this foundation that the church will be built, upon love, upon a connection to God, upon abiding in the vine, about drawing life and love from Him. We cannot love without Him. And we are so easily distracted by the things that we see around us that we don't love Him as we should. And so that's our call this morning. If we want to build trust in each other, we're going to have to pursue God. If we want to care about someone else, if we want to love someone else, we're going to have to pursue God. And we're going to have to know His love and be filled with it. And then, and only then, will we be able to act in the best interests of others. Amen. God bless.